Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
Proceed to the Root by Elad Haber, with music by Fog Machine, read by Jenna Hanchey.
The world is under construction. It's all automated now. Huge helicopter-shaped drones fly half-built buildings overhead, then humanoid robots assemble them in a day, and then the cleaner bots show up and clear the mess left behind. It's efficient, but God, the traffic. Two dopey-headed guys in reflective shirts direct cars, a few at a time, past 3 closed lanes. Since bots do all the heavy construction work, the state-mandated half-human workforce has to be put to use, signaling cars to go or stop. Slowly and non-efficient at all seems just about the right speed for these two. I've got the windows rolled down, saving money on AC, fanning myself on some book I'm ignoring, when I notice a sharp-dressed man glance into a handful of cabs in front of me. He's clutching a duffel bag and trying not to look behind him. He checks the car in front of me, another cab, then locks eyes with me. He breaks into a jolt towards the back seat and lets himself in. He's out of breath. In between sighs, he says, "Underground." And that's all I need to get moving. I swipe the meter handle, punch in a code on my nav, and proceed to excoriate myself from this dopey traffic stop. When I whiz past one of them, on the shoulder, completely illegal. He looks halfway offended, but fuck if I haven't been stuck in that line for an hour. There's no access to the underground in the 6th borough, so I follow the directions towards the nearest bridge and the glistening city beyond it. The man can't stop looking out the window, like some runaway teenager waiting for the cops to roll in. His movements are quick and feral. He's freaking me out, actually. "Hey, man," I say. "You all right?" He looks at me like he's realizing someone else is in the car for the first time. I can almost hear him count back from 5 and then let out a held breath. He sits back and closes his eyes. I keep mine on the road. Sleeping in cabs is one of the last socially acceptable places to doze off in our society, in my experience. I think people like the robo-cabs even more because of that. Less chance of some schmuck like myself starting up a conversation. But thankfully, those half-half laws apply to all businesses, not just construction. Otherwise, I'd be out of a job. We bounce off some bad concrete, and then head up a ramp to a bridge. Halfway through, a rumble starts below the car. I feel it in my stomach first, as usual. The traffic slows. The man snaps out of his brief sleep with an exclamation point. "Why did we stop?" I can't hide the annoyance in my voice. Inspection. This is common these days. With all the construction going on, building materials had a way of disappearing, so bridges and highways are frequently scanned and checked for contraband. The man curses under his breath. "Don't worry, man," I say. "This will be quick. Be out of here in a minute." But I can tell he's still nervous. Keeps glancing at the duffel by his side on the back seat. Outside, the wandering white lights of the drones scan the cars and trucks on the bridge. If they find something suspicious, the light would turn red and initiate an alarm. Out of nowhere, the man says, "There's a head in the bag." What? Whose? Not who. What? Oh, shit. Flatly, I say, "You killed a bot." He clears his throat, his speech already prepared. "I discontinued a piece of hardware in advance of its scheduled end-of-life cycle." Sounds like you killed a bot. It's not that simple. It never is. I grumble as two cones of lights converge on my cab. As expected, the lights flash to red, and a siren from the heavens sounds. Fuck. Okay, time to go. Speeding away from a traffic stop seems like a theme today. I love a good theme. My tires scream as I swerve through narrow gaps between idling cars. I find a gap and do a 360 turn back the way we came. My passenger gasps. Then I pull another hard turn, angling up parallel to the edge of the bridge. I stop and turn to the man. "Dump it," I tell him, nodding at his bag. "I can't." There's a pregnant pause. He thinks I'm going to kick him out. I should kick him out. "They'll kill you," I tell him instead. "Just dump it." "No, I can't. This head has a vital RF signature we need." I'm not asking who "we" means for a reason. The man continues. "It will save lives. Real lives, human lives." My fingers shout at me. I've been squeezing the steering wheel. I let out a curse in some old language I remember my father used when he got angry. I can hear the sirens in the distance. We have to get off this bridge. I pull the gauge back to drive and gun it towards incoming traffic. The great thing about driving like a madman is people tend to give you space. The bot-driven cars are less keen on kindness, but their movements are slow and predictable. I circle them like I'm in a go-kart playing bumper cars. We jostle and jolt as my cab scrapes between cars. A van comes up out of nowhere, and I swerve hard right to avoid a collision. Then there's a small break in the cars. 10 glorious seconds between the next incoming line, and the end of the bridge coming up. "Hold on!" I shout, out of reflex more than reality. I slam on the gas as if I had a rocket engine strapped to my car's ass. This time, it's the other cars swerving around me. There's a crash and a shudder in my rear view, but I don't stop to look. A few more seconds going the wrong way, and then we're off the bridge. I can hear police drones sirening from all sides. 80% of the police force is bots these days, a rare exception to the half-half laws. They could drop kamikaze drones on us at any moment. I duck into alleys, the edges of my poor cab scraping against brick walls. We collide into trash cans, sending them flying. My passenger questions my sanity. "Where are we going?" he shouts. I know a place, but I don't answer. Through increasingly cramped alleyways we roll, the sound of sirens fading a bit, until we reach a stretch of city oddly quiet. Abandoned construction materials litter the floor here. Posters and signs splattered with dried blood, cranes and dump trucks gathering dust. In the center of the zone, a revered structure, Grand Central Station. It was going to be replaced with something shiny and new, But that was a step too far for the city's human residents. We protested. We boycotted. The police fought back with tanks and their robot mini-soldiers. In response, a protester detonated a kind of bomb that fizzed the air and scrambled our F signatures, creating a dead zone for bot activity, and accidentally irradiating the area. Unless you are fond of cancer, you stay away. The building itself is in terrible shape. Spray-painted anti-bot slogans and murals cake the walls. Stray animals have punched through the fencing. I barrel towards the fences. My passenger shouts something. We flatten the fence with no trouble, but it's the old glass doors that put up a fight. I rock the steering wheel back and forth, squeezing the life of the car, and finally crash through the door in a spray of glass. Once inside the old structure, I drive down the huge staircases to the underground food court. It also looks like it was hastily abandoned. Overhead lights blink distress signals, and merchant signs hang off their hinges. Somehow there's still a scent of hot pretzel down here. I drive as far as the sputtering engine will let me until it dies. Right there in the dark, the nav's still alive, its silent screen begging me to proceed to the route, proceed to the route, proceed to the route. My passenger pulls some shards of glass from his hair. He kicks open his door and then helps me out through the passenger side window. He pats me on the shoulder with one hand, still holding the duffel bag with the other one. "You're a crazy motherfucker," he says. I can't help but smile. "That's right," I reply. "I want you to meet some friends of mine," he says, and then takes the lead towards the darkness of the underground tunnels and maybe, somewhere, a light.
Farewell Jupiter by Toshiya Kamei, with music by Fall Precautions, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. Even as a kid, Jupiter was Chiaki's planet. Her dream of traveling there led her to study astrophysics in college, and her first job out of college was as an engineer at a private spaceflight company. But she put her Jupiter dreams on hold while raising her son, June. She would read to him before bed, flipping through dog-eared photos of the gas giant, adding facts and details from her research. As his face lit up, and his small fingers traced Jupiter's red spot, it was almost as good as getting there herself. 15 years into her marriage, however, her life derailed. Her son, her little adventurer, committed suicide. Kathy was the one who found June's body hanging in the bedroom closet. After that, it was like the lights went out. Chiaki didn't know how to live without him. She didn't know how to live with Kathy without him. On that gloomy afternoon, Chiaki received a call from Kathy. The tone of her voice immediately told Chiaki something had happened. Between sobs, Kathy told her June had died. Chiaki felt gut-punched. Through her tears, she glanced at the picture of Jupiter's turbulent atmosphere and its moons on her desk. Its slender ring had always fascinated her. The room blurred, her vision darkened, and she almost fainted. She stumbled into the restroom and cried so loud the whole office noticed. Without asking any questions, her boss gave her the rest of the day off. A coworker drove her home because she was too upset. With her wife by her side, Chiaki went on autopilot to get through the wake and the funeral. A few weeks later, she lingered on the threshold of Jun's room. She walked to the bookshelf and pulled down an old, dusty book, a dog-eared paperback of Ben Nova's Jupiter. She had gifted him her copy for his 13th birthday. She looked at the cover and traced her finger over the image of Jupiter as if caressing her son's cheek. As she leafed through it, the descriptions of life forms on the planet flooded back to her. Her research told her the story was far from far-fetched. She then came across her son's scrawl about his desire to visit the planet one day. Earlier in the week, Kathy wanted to take Jun's belongings to Salvation Army, but Chiaki yelled at her until she stopped. Chiaki kept a small altar dedicated to her son in the bedroom. First thing in the morning, she lit incense and prayed. "Honey, I hate to bring this up," Kathy began, "but the smell of incense is so strong I can hardly breathe." "Excuse me? All my clothes smell like incense." "I'm sorry, but it comforts me. I did hate it when I was young, but now I know why my Japanese grandmother lit incense every single day." They got into a shouting match. Kathy insisted on moving on, but how could she be so callous? Chiaki's days became a blur. She shut herself in her study and buried herself in work. She had long theorized the energy fields of Jupiter's life forms had drifted into the atmosphere after numerous moons struck the planet's surface. After all, according to thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, and the total energy in the cosmos remains constant. She could prove her theory once and for all if she traveled to the planet. She looked to the ceiling and wondered if Jun's soul could have drifted from his body into the atmosphere above her head. The first time they had friends over after Jun's death, it felt like one of their parties with kids playing video games upstairs and adults gossiping over drinks. Kathy chatted with a group of women, pointing to her painting hanging on the wall. It depicted a tiger swallowtail perched on a tulip. It was so realistic that Chiaki was sure the butterfly would at any moment flutter across the room. She barely recognized her wife. Chiaki met Kathy's gaze briefly before she averted her eyes. She then noticed Pucci, their dog, laying on the carpet. His large, watery eyes were sadder than ever. She let out a deep sigh. Chiaki didn't remember much of anything over the next several days. As her life fell back into routine, she became withdrawn. She had trouble sleeping and stayed up most of the night. At first, Kathy embraced her and tried to comfort her, but she soon gave up in tears. The two women began sleeping in separate rooms. Pucci kept his distance from Chiaki, as if trying to avoid her. A few weeks later, Chiaki crawled out of her depression and was functioning again. Yet the silence in Jun's room still haunted her. Her wife's insistence on getting on with her life smothered her. She then volunteered for a solo manned mission to Jupiter. She did so without consulting anyone, not even her wife. "Kathy, I'm going to Jupiter next month," Chiaki blurted out at dinner. "I'm taking Jun with me. His ashes." "Are you serious?" Kathy said, dropping her fork. Chiaki nodded. Kathy frowned. "You can pull out, right? Tell them you've changed your mind." No. Chiaki shook her head. I want to do this. What about us? Kathy protested, her frown deepening. I'll see you in 3 years? What kind of marriage is that? I won't ask you to wait for me, Kathy. I can't do that. What are you talking about? Kathy glared at Chiaki, pain visible in her face. Have you gone mad? Kathy tried to talk Chiaki out of her plan every chance she had until the day of her departure, but Chiaki gave up no ground. Chiaki took out life insurance. She didn't tell her, but Kathy was her beneficiary. More friendly to Kathy than he was to Chiaki, Pucci stayed with the former. To Chiaki's surprise, space travel never caught the interest of the general population. Certainly not to the extent investors had expected. Not many wanted to leave Earth for an extended period of time. Only solitary types were willing to travel far into space. Even though the latest in space propulsion technology halved travel time, Jupiter was still 3 years away. Chiaki's only companion would be Echo 5, the dependable, dull AI on board. June would have wanted us to stay together, Kathy said as she drove Chiaki to the airport. I know, Chiaki said, but he wanted to see Jupiter. Neither of them said another word the rest of the way. In the airport lounge, they embraced for a long while. Chiaki covered her mouth to smother her cry as Kathy turned and walked away without looking back. Chiaki spent much of her journey asleep in the comfort of her cryo chamber. Whenever she woke, she lit incense and prayed before the image of Jun on the portable altar, comforted by the familiar incense. There lay the capsule containing his ashes. Echo 5 oversaw much of her research, and the AI would wake her if necessary. She had recurring dreams in which Jun appeared. Mom, why Jupiter? Do you remember Jupiter, the Ben Nova novel? Jun nodded. It turns out the book is no fantasy, Chiaki said. We've detected carbon in its atmosphere. As you know, carbon forms the basis of organic life. Is there life on Jupiter? Jin asked. His eyes shone with excitement. My hunch is yes, but there's only one way to find out. Don't forget to bring us back a souvenir. Jin smiled his usual smile. When she woke, she didn't remember much, except for fuzzy snapshots of memory. She tried to remember Jin's smile, but it was painful to do so. Hello, Chiaki. Echo 5's computerized voice chirped sweetly as Chiaki stepped into the control room. I hope you had a pleasant sleep. Thanks, Chiaki answered, stifling a yawn. What's up? We're almost there, Echo 5 said. We're receiving radio waves. Take a look. Chiaki glanced at the monitor and saw graphs of radio waves on the screen. They look like brain waves. What's going on? Echo 5 remained silent, computing the information it had collected. Where do the radio waves come from? Chiaki wondered aloud. Do you think Jupiter is sentient? Not only that, I'm picking up a multitude of energy fields. They're floating in Jupiter's atmosphere. A few hours later, Jupiter loomed large before Chiaki. Her vision blurred with tears as she saw the planet with the naked eye for the first time. In the atmosphere, storms formed geometric shapes, passed each other, ripped apart, and merged. They stared back at her like gigantic eyes. Chiaki stifled another yawn and went back to her room. As soon as she lay down, she fell asleep. She had another dream about Jupiter. In it, time sped up. Bright colored images rushed through her mind. Gas and dust formed dozens of moons, and they began to orbit the planet. Ganymede, the largest satellite of Jupiter, would cover the entire Eurasian continent on Earth. Microbes grew and multiplied by splitting. A swarm of swallowtails alighted flowers. Chiaki was sure they were the offspring of Kathy's butterfly. After a while, the storms intensified. One moon after another spiraled into Jupiter, wiping out life on the planet. "Welcome, Earthling," a voice boomed. "Who are you?" Chiaki asked, looking around. "I'm Jupiter." Taken aback, Chiaki remained silent. "You've traveled so far. Do you miss your home?" "I miss my family, but I have no one waiting back home." Chiaki shook her head, dejected. "I don't think that's true." "I don't think Kathy will take me back." "You never know." She woke several hours later. Jupiter mourned the demise of Jovian life forms, just as Chiaki mourned for Jun. However, these life forms remained as energy fields in the atmosphere long after they lost their physical form. Jun's soul was still on Earth, somewhere in the atmosphere. "Goodbye, Jun," Chiaki whispered. She pressed the eject button and the outer door opened. Jun's capsule shot into space and drifted towards the planet. She followed the capsule with her eyes until it disappeared in the top layer of clouds. "Let's go home," Chiaki said to the AI as she walked into the control room. "Once we're home, you must help me find a way to communicate with Jun's soul in Earth's atmosphere." She wondered about Kathy. No matter what happened, she owed her an apology. "Roger that," Echo 5 chirped as the spacecraft steered toward Earth. In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Proceed to the Root by Elad Haber, with music by Fog Machine, and Farewell Jupiter by Toshiya Kamei, with music by Fall Precautions. Theme music by Dan Lesko. Be sure to visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree, California, or visit us online at spacecowboybooks.com.